ran out of dams to give, and and my usual lack of respect for established authority came to the fore too many times. So it was high school was a trying time for me, but once I got into college and I had a lot more freedom, particularly intellectually, that's when life started getting good for me. And even to this day, I love learning new things, which is part of my publishing gig, that every day there is always something new down the line. And it keeps the process fresh for me. And plus, like I said, I enjoy the attention. I enjoy helping others find their path in this little adventure called publishing. And the nice thing is, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but you have to invest, mostly in time and effort. But a lot of people, if they're willing to do that, can find themselves with a satisfying creative career.
Yeah, you make a great point. It's great that you're willing to help out so many people, because I have advice to give occasionally on radio, but I feel like when it comes down to it, this isn't a paying gig yet. We're still working on all that. It's been a very tried and timing, little gig, side fun thing I've enjoyed doing it for, over a decade now. But it seems like, you're right. At the end of the day, it's great to be your own boss and be able to have some of that money coming in so you can put more back into your product.
Exactly. And in your case, I will remove your imposter syndrome. This is a term I've just recently learned, where other people may see us as being higher up on the food chain than we feel we are. But like you said, you've done this for over a decade. You're damn good at what you do. And, you have a lot of knowledge, and you have seen a lot of changes over the time that you've been broadcasting. So you've got things to teach other people. And like with publishing, in my case, I feel that, like, if you can teach other people how to do this correctly, how to do it with as much quality as you're able, and to do it with, as strong a sense of ethics, I guess you could call it, in far as, your business dealing and your personal dealings with people. If you can maintain that, it isn't so much that you're going after a larger piece of the overall pie, but by your good work, you're going to grow the pie for other people. And thus your slice grows
Absolutely.
too. So.
Starting off, I think, anybody, not anybody, but at least for me, being a small-town kid, always had a feeling I wanted to do something with my life that got me out of this small town. And although I haven't left yet, I still am based here. It's taken me a lot of great places. I've met a lot of great people. And You're right. I trust me, I've yelled at a few people on the phone who decided they wanted to call up and start cussing at me over something. But 99% of the time, I'm professional as ever. I try to have a G-rated product that everyone can enjoy. And unfortunately, some people don't seem to read that fine line in the Inquirer that we're G-rated, and they just start spouting stuff. But
yeah,
it's trying it sometimes. I know you've been just even before you had your own company, you've been an author for so many years that I know you've had that time where you go, "What is this even worth it anymore?" You have to keep going, and I've found that maybe hardest of all.
Well, that's when you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what the people closest to you are telling you, that you can do this, that you have talent. And you see other people who have maybe had bigger hurdles to cross than you or I could ever think of. One person I think of, and I find a lot of inspiration from him, is a motivational speaker by the name of Les Brown. He is a very funny speaker, but he is very insightful as well. And this is a guy who was literally born on a dirt floor. He and his brother, his twin brother, were immediately, like fresh out of the womb, immediately separated and adopted by two different families. To add to that, Brown was some people, you know how some people just don't test well in school. There's just something about the test structure that doesn't appeal to them, and they don't respond well. Well, Les Brown was very intelligent, but he tested as if he were mentally handicapped. And so they put him in that class in grade school. But one day in sixth grade, sixth grade's about the time they tried mainstreaming a lot of the mentally impaired, children in school. At least in my history, they used to. And one day the teacher has the class with the mixed class, and he tells Les Brown, there's a math problem on the board. I want you to go up there and solve it for the class. And Les is like, I'm sorry, but I'm mentally impaired. I can't do that. And the teacher's saying, well, how do you know that? And Les says, well, I took a test, and that's what they told me. He said, and the teacher said, don't let anyone ever define who you are. Don't let them tell you who you are. You make that up for yourself. And since that day, Les Brown has created multiple businesses, multiple streams of income. He's a multi-millionaire.
Wow.
And he's got, all these businesses. He's got, his motivational speaking. He's a published author. He does podcasts. He's just all over the place. He does videos. He was married to Gladys Knight, for heaven's sake. So let's talk about accomplishment there.
Wow.
Yeah, so here's a guy that started like at less than nothing, and you see where he went, but he did it through hard work, through determination, and through believing in himself. And that's the sort of example that I like to follow, and hopefully I give something at least like 1/100th of that sort of impression to other people.
Yeah, I almost think I've had to be persistent. You have to sometimes not take no for an answer. Sure. Especially, I hate Facebook because it'll say like read 3:21 a.m. and then like a week and a half later you've heard nothing from this person. You're like, okay, do you want to do it? Do you not want to do it? I could get a no. I'd rather hear a no than nothing.
Oh yeah, that's true in a lot of areas. I've dealt with editors who. The minute I send something off, I for some reason I feel that I ought to hear back from them within 10 minutes of the contract. But one of my art directors, Trevor Hawkins, who does my paperback covers, he has a way of making sure people respond. What he does is he will write an email to me, hit send, and the minute his finger leaves that key, he's on the phone calling me, asking me if I've read that yet. And I'm trying to explain to him, electricity doesn't work as fast as you do. You have to give it time to come through the interwebs and show up in my laptop before you start calling me and asking my opinion on things. Of course, I revealed that to him, and of course, ever since then, he's got it timed so that I am picking up the phone just as he's hitting enter.
Yeah, I can understand doing that. I've maybe not that fast, but I've been a guilty party to that myself. Especially, I've always said the people I think I'm going to get, I don't get, but the people I never imagined I could get, like a Lou Ferrigno, for example, is who gets right back to me. And it just drops your jaw. You're like, oh.
Yeah, isn't it great to deal with professionals?
I have to deal with as many as I can to try to learn some level of professionalism.
Well, this show will set you back about 10 steps. I'm sorry, but no. I love it when people are prompt with their response, and it inspires me to try to be at least as prompt in mine. I try not to blow anyone off when they correspond with me, because people took the time to write to you, so they do deserve some sort of answer.
Absolutely. I did want to mention, of course, you've done so much with comics and with Charles over at Silver Phoenix, and you guys have recently done you've got some re-release stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. Spencer Spook was one of them. How do you go about, getting something, say you grew up reading this comic book, you're like, I'd love to be able to write something more to this or follow this story. How do you go about doing that? Because I think that has to be very hard in itself.
It can be. Now, Spencer Spook, like Skyman, who I have a novel out, the original Skyman Battles the Master of Steam,
Yes.
available on Amazon and Smashwords. I happen to know the man who bought those properties. A man named Ron France, who himself published comics back in the mid-1980s. But this was during a time when there were multiple distributors, not just one big one like we have now in Diamond Distributing. And a number of these companies were going under and basically leaving Ron with unpaid bills. And so he decided he'd rather keep his house than his publishing empire. But he had purchased the rights to characters from the Golden Age of comics, such as Skyman and The Face from Columbia Comics, and also Spencer Spook from ACG, American Comics Group. And he just held on to him for years, and then he and we worked together on a project. He had sent an interview to a magazine. They needed a transcriber, and so they called me to do the transcription. Well, then Ron called to thank me because he's one of those old-time gentlemen like that. And he and I struck up a firm friendship, and then it just got to the point where when I told him, hey, I'm doing books and comics now, and he and I worked out a deal to do these characters that he owns the intellectual properties. Now, the stories themselves from the Golden Age are in the public domain. The characters themselves are not. And he's also willing to show you the paperwork when it goes through your attorney, when he takes you to court. So anyway.
Wow. Well, I was going to say, it's one of those catch-22s, it seems like. Songs can be in the public domain, or you might think they are because they're so old, but somehow someone owns, like Happy Birthday was in litigation not too long ago, and that song is older than anybody we've probably ever known. So it amazes me that something like Happy Birthday that everybody has sung multiple times around the whole United States, around the whole world, would come up in some kind of litigation. So you made a great point.
Right, and then the thing is, there are so many wonderful properties in the public domain. I just recently have written a couple of stories about characters that are clearly in the public domain. I find them fascinating, and they can be used as springboards for new characters, and there's a lot of new work coming out in books and in comic books from people who are taking public domain characters as well as what they call abandoned copyrights, where the copyright owner just cannot be found. So, like there's a group of friends I have who have adopted the old that's somebody else. That's part of that is public domain. But the old Dell Comics group. At one point, Dell was the #1 best-selling publisher in America, like right after World War II. Of course, they had licenses for things like Tarzan and the Disney characters, the Warner Brothers characters, Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, all these great popular characters from those times in movies and radio and such. So, but they had some proprietary characters too, such as a superheroic versions of Dracula, Frankenstein, and the werewolf. And those are the characters that my friends are doing. So.
Yeah, it seems like Dell Comics did a lot with Walt Disney as well. Comics and stories, Uncle Scrooge, Mickey Mouse.
Oh yeah, the old Carl Barks stuff. Yeah, beautiful work. Still holds up to this day.
I feel kind of left out because I am nerdy in a lot of ways, but I never got into comics. I just never did. It never still doesn't seem to strike me as something, but I know kids love them, and they've seemed to have had a big resurgence in recent years. As you said, a lot of companies seem to go down after the golden age and going up to the 80s, but there has been quite a big resurgence, and I think that's awesome because it gives a lot more authors a chance to work together and a great team of artists to come up with a whole new product for a whole new generation of kids and adults to enjoy.
Oh, exactly. And then so much new stuff is being made in the independent comics market, such as my comic drawing partner, Eric Hawkins, no relation to Trevor. He just published a beautiful book called The Zombiful World of Oz. And it basically takes